we'd never played that comp before, so it was interesting. Ooh, I'm excited to see what Tarek does this game.
Yeah, I haven't seen a Tarek in a really long time.
I played him in a viewer game last week, just kind of as a joke. Someone wanted me to play Battle Tarek. It was interesting. It was interesting and fun. Not good though.
He just seems kind of outclassed by all of the other, like there's Braum and there's Leona and there's even Thresh who's like a slightly more defensive tower. Like just everyone is has 10 times more tools than he does, and what he has is a heal.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you want a really manly support, I mean, just pick Braum.
Exactly.
He's always the right choice. Anyways, I see a bunch of people discussing the giveaways in chat. You do need to be following in order to win those. We have hourly bonus prizes, and then we have RP cards every 250 follows. I'm just going to update all the on-screen information so you know what's going on. I'm not going to be able to respond to as many questions, though, because we're going to be focusing on the game at hand. Looks like picks and bans are just going through, so if you want to go over just general team comps here, matchups, then we'll get this rolling.
So there's one thing that's interesting about both comps, and the first one, the blue team, is all physical damage.
Yeah.
Which isn't the worst thing, actually, because they have a Jarvan who's got that percent armor shred, and they have Jace, who'll probably just build, like, Last Whisper pretty early. Same goes for Riven. But it does mean that their comp won't scale fully into the super late game. But, on the other hand, the purple team has basically triple AP, so they're in a similar position, where I think they're going to need Diana to pick up Abyssal Scepter, or maybe Vladimir, just to give their team extra damage. And it is a little bit harder to itemize for MR than it is for armor. So I think double AP is, not that bad. But
They definitely have the abilities to make it work, but it's going to be very comp reliant. They're going to need to land like a wombo combo with the Malphite ult into Diana assassinations, and of course the Vladimir damage amplification on his
right,
ult. If they don't land that perfectly onto a very large group of enemies, I could see Riven and Jace just sort of getting people low or getting free kills, and then Jinx just getting the resets off of that. If you can't lock those three characters down, there's so much damage potential coming out. Even if like Jarvan's full tank or Thresh is full tank, even just those three damage threats, that's a
there's so much
lot to
burst,
try and
right?
peel off of people.
And then on top of that, they have good disengage with Jarvan and Thresh and Jinx, so they could just poke with Jace for a really long time. It does look like it's going to be a Jace top, I'm guessing, from the teleport.
I would
But
assume so, yeah.
And then the other kind of weird thing is that Vladimir really wants to start the fight off, but you're going to have that jungle Malphite initiating, and so unless Malphite's already able to hit a bunch of people clumped up, Vladimir's ult's not going to be able to do very much because there's no follow-up initiation to hold people in place.
Exactly.
Normally when you have a Vladimir, you want like a secondary initiator in your support position, like a Leona or a Braum, who can... So you want one initiate target to keep them all together, and then Vlad ults, and then you kind of need a secondary initiation so you can keep putting damage down.
It may just be my own preference for her, but I honestly think Nami might have been a good pick for this, because you
Or
have that
Nami, yeah,
combination
that
of
ult.
engage, disengage, where if Malphite lands the ult, you just ult and then bubble across, or bubble ult, whichever
Right.
combination makes more sense at the time. But then you combine that with the lane dominance from the sustain and poke, but you have a disengage then, and that's what I'm really seeing Purple Team lacking right now. They don't have a way to say, no, we don't want this fight. If they fall behind, they're going to fall behind hard.
On the other hand, the Taric will be particularly strong versus the Quadra AD comp of
For
Blue
sure,
Side.
yes.
I didn't actually think about that at first because I never see a Taric, and it'll be a while before he has the armor items for that to matter. But it does mean that the late game will just be even weirder for Blue Side team.
Yeah, I mean, if Tarek and Malphite can just sort of stack armor, they may be able to just essentially win fights no matter how far behind they are, just from the sheer defensive nature. But how are they going to secure those kills? It's going to be very, very Diana reliant, and Diana is not the most, not versatile, but most reliable champion when it comes to either you get really, really far ahead and you one-shot people, or you're behind and you're just sort of trying to clean up.
Right. I also don't like the Ghost on Vladimir simply because he's playing against a Jarvan. And whenever I'm top lane playing against a Jarvan, no matter what champion I'm playing, I really like to take Flash because getting trapped in that Cataclysm can kind of turn into a free kill in ways that it otherwise wouldn't be.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Nasus has a similar issue where he should normally take Ghost, but versus Jarvan, it's kind of time to just suck it up and take flash. Lane-wise, I think Vladimir should have the advantage. He can rush Zonia's versus this team
Hmm.
because it's all physical, and he'll do well in lane. And I think he will be able to out-split push and out-sustain Jace just because Jace doesn't really naturally invest in lifesteal after the Bloodthirster nerfs.
Right.
I am assuming it's Jace top. I think it is because of the teleport, but that could be wrong.
I've seen a lot of different Jace builds, and I'm not 100% sold on what one's best. I think it mostly just depends on how laning phase itself is going. The one I sort of saw right before. Correct me if I'm wrong. The cooldown time on Ghostblade that has gone to live server now, has it not?
That has. It's 6 seconds now.
Yeah, 60. Yeah. Sorry, no. I knew that the ranged
Oh, you mean
duration
the
went up,
okay.
but the cooldown also went up the next patch, and I think that's gone to live because it went from 45-second cooldown to 60.
So that will hurt him a little bit if it has. I think it.
I'm pretty sure that was in 4.10.
Okay.
I think. I could be wrong on that. But
If it wasn't, it was in
I've seen-
4.11, so we're good either way.
It was either 4.10 or 4.11. I remember seeing it in one patch note. The build I've relatively seen is that if he gets ahead at all, he can still go for the tier build. I don't know if he's going to want to do that in this case, but then he can use the Brutalizer sort of as a crutch while that stacks up.
Right.
But with the duration, the duration is buffed, but then the cooldown is also nerfed. So it's really going to boil down to how well he uses that active if he opts to go that route. I've not seen any Jaces going Black Cleaver anymore. I mean, I just don't see much reason for it. I know it used to be the thing when he was just sort of bullied into being a poke AD caster, I suppose it would be.
I think the issue that I have is if he doesn't beat Vladimir, Vladimir will simply be able to outsplit push him late game. Teleport is much stronger on Vlad than it is on Jace because he becomes that immovable object top lane.
Yeah.
Diana versus Riven is also an interesting matchup because they both have the same weakness, which is they want to get into melee and they want to stay in melee.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever gets ahead is just going to snowball out of control because the other person is going to have no way of dealing with it. Because their response is also going to be get into melee and stay in melee.
Exactly. And when you're forced to just trade autos, whoever's ahead wins.
It's almost like playing the same champion against each other. If one's ahead, they're going to win.
Oh, I hate your matchups.
I think Diana should have the advantage there, again, because Zonia's rush will be pretty viable, or at least getting the early, the item that builds into Zonia.
Arm guard.
Arm guard, there we go.
Yep. Yeah, Diana
bot-
does really well versus melees, but as soon as she falls behind, it's over.
Right. Bot lane, Caitlyn's really strong right now because of the itemization changes, in my opinion. Because she does really well on the, 5-item build because her range is so long. Unfortunately, she's against a Jarvan. Which is kind of the champion that's really good at jumping onto those long-range AD carries and locking them down. So I think that negates some of the advantage, but I think Jinx is in a much worse position. I hate playing as an AD carry without a dash versus a Malphite.
I know. She's going to have to be really, really careful with that. Alright, so we have loaded in here. I'm just going to get all the picks lined up here. I see there's a couple questions going through chat. Unfortunately, though, we're going to mostly be focusing on the game here. So if you do have questions, I would recommend saving them for after the game, and we'll be able to go over those between matches. I'm a little bit surprised to see Riven starting Longsword. Maybe it's just the Doran's Blade nerfs, but I would think that she'd want that little bit of extra lifesteal.
Yeah, I think the Doran's Blade item is quite strong right now on AD carries, especially because it scales well. If you do something like triple Doran's Blade, you'll have a lot of lane dominance, and then when you build Infinity Edge, since it's lifesteal now and not flat, you actually have a decent amount of lifesteal. Only then, if you're ahead, you can just rush that BF sword, and you already have one Doran's Blade for lifesteal.
Exactly. Most common I've seen is either one Doran's into, as you said, BF Sword, Infinity Edge, or if you're going a little bit even, get the double Doran's, Infinity Edge, and then rush right into your standard build, whether that's Phantom Dancer, whether it's whatever you need to make it work at that point. Ghost Blade on certain AD carries.
I also think I would prefer to see Cloth 5 on Vladimir. Boots are not bad versus a Jarvan, but it's really just hard to escape Jarvan ganks in general, even if you have the boots.
Especially given Jace's early game dominance.
Exactly. The Cloth would just let him sustain through the lane. He has teleport. He can play a little bit safe, go back, get that Seeker's Arm Guard right at 860 gold then. Or even one thing I've seen people do is push against a Jarvan is push the lane out quickly and then go back at like level 3 before he gets top, or level 2 before he gets top, buy potions and come straight back to lane.
Now that may not be the case here because he is starting blue buff. Correct me if I'm wrong, should Jarvan not be starting red?
I think in general, people start blue because their thinking is, oh, I want the mana to use all my abilities. But actually, you can do a full clear from red to blue without running out of mana.
And so it's better leash.
Exactly. And then you have blue longer for what I like to think of as like the early ganking phase, which is really when you need it. When you go in for those ganks and you run out of mana or whatever. So I prefer to see a red start whenever you're on blue side at the very least.
I definitely agree with that. Now, I'm interested to see here with this top lane how aggressive Jace is going to try and play this, knowing that his AD carry is not going to be ganking early, but knowing that, again, that he does have that early game dominance.
I do want to point out one thing that just happened mid is Diana let Riven hit level 2 really early, and that let Riven just get a free trade-off. Especially in melee lanes, it's just really important to make sure, well, actually in every lane, it's important to make sure that they don't hit level 2 before you. You can see Caitlyn and Taric are getting pushed in and kind of bullied about a bit for the same reason.
And there goes the hook on to Caitlyn. Stun goes down, but so does Flay. I don't think that exhaust was technically needed, but they do get the Caitlyn flash, and they just go their own separate ways.
That's kind of exactly why you want that 2 at the same time, because if they're able to get the early level 2, it means they can go aggressive with really no cost. Because if that thresh hook misses, it's not like they can counter-engage level 1 versus level 2.
Exactly, you still have that second skill to either disengage or still win the fight.
Right.
It looks like we have a double gank coming in mid here.
I give the advantage here to Jarvan.
Yeah. Because he has that very, very strong passive early game.
Exactly.
Riven goes into the flash, Jarvan secures the kill. Just gets a refresh on his buffs. I like the decision to get some warding and counter jungling put down into the enemy jungle here, but at this time there's nothing for him to steal. It's good for vision control though.
Yeah, I mean it definitely will let him see future ganks like that coming. The thing that I want to point out about that gank is actually, well, here's another gank mid, but it looks like the EQ was missed, so Diana should be fine. In general, in junglers, you have 2 types of junglers. You have herbivore junglers who kind of just want to farm up to 6 before they do anything. You know, they eat their Wheaties first, and then they're really scary. And then you've got carnivore junglers who kind of just want to put pressure on the map all the time. That's like your Lee Sins, your Jarvans. And so it's weird for me to see a Malphite gank like that, because he has no gank tools early. And almost categorically, the only exception I can think of is Skarner. Herbivore junglers lose in those 2v2 ganks, the ones where both the junglers show up at the same time, because they just bring CC and no damage.
Exactly. They're very team reliant in their laner dealing the damage required to secure the kill. Now, I also want to point out, Vlad cycled down mid to try and gank a Riven. Riven has so much mobility that pretty much no matter what you do, at very most, you're going to get a Q onto her. That's not going to be kill potential. I don't see much reason to do that. Even if you're not losing out on any CS, at that point just go back to base and buy something, even if it's just a cloth armor.
Right. Also, just to belabor that point, basically what it is CC junglers basically are getting picks. You know, it's like when Blitzcrank grabs someone, he's not contributing to the fight, he's just saying, hey, I got someone for you, let's go. Whereas those fighting junglers, really what they're doing is they're just picking a fight. And so if a jungler makes a pick, and the other jungler is there and is ready to just fight, they've basically, like, they've started the fight for them. You know, it's like you walk up to a bully and, like, punch him, and he's like, well, wait, I was going to steal your lunch money anyway.
Exactly.
Thank you for walking up to me and punching me.
Now, the pink ward coming out from Malphite here, I really don't like placing pink wards there because they're almost impossible to defend. If you're on blue side, warding at the very, very base of the tri-bush there is quite easy to defend. You can use it as a bait potential in order to secure kills. But as we see, Jinx is already just taking that. It's a waste of gold at that point. So Malphite wasted part of his jungle clear by moving all the way down there. He put himself 100 gold behind and didn't really get anything for it. And there wasn't any potential to get anything for it.
Right. It's also just very hard to defend pink wards when you're being pushed in as hard as purple side is right now. It looks like Vladimir is stepping off to just clear in his jungle. That's kind of something Vladimir can do just because of the amount of sustain he has. But in general, I don't advise it. I see people do that a lot, and they take so much damage from those golems that they just can't go back to lane at that point. If you're being zoned away or if you're pushed out, it's, like you said, often better to just go back, buy an item, come back to lane. Especially as I see he hasn't used his teleport yet.
I'm surprised. Yeah, I would think he would have enough for his arm guard. He has 1400.
He should have enough for, I mean, either arm guard or hex tech, whichever one he wants to go for.
Exactly.
Actually, another gank coming in that might have enough damage, actually, just because of the ultimate. That's a pretty solid play. They had both hit 6, and so that's the point at which you can really gank Riven, because Diana actually has a gap closer to jump onto Riven.
And then pull her back in to cancel her dash.
Right. That's much smarter than the previous gank, where it was just sort of like, not much can be done there.
That being said, all of this CS top lane is being lost. I mean, it's fantastic that she got the kill. Okay, there's the teleport.
The teleport helps with that.
Yeah. I'm just shocked to see a Vlad roaming when usually he is that immovable lane object where he's just going to farm up all game long.
We actually see at least a pink ward going back to them, so they're kind of even from that first pink ward lost.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of early pinks, but I generally only place them if they're in an area that I can defend. If I can't place one in the river, okay, fine, I'll throw it like on our buffs, just to stop any counter jungling. You have to place them reactively to what's happening in the game. Now, Malphite was here for this gank, and then he walked away while Diana was engaging. That's a little bit questionable, but he is not 6, so...
Exactly, he's not 6. I feel like he should be spending more of his time just farming. You'll look at the CS, and he's only 5 ahead of Jarvan, who has a kill already.
Yeah, Jarvan just flashed in and ulted. It's a free kill over to Riven. Vlad mid again, and is going to be able to secure this kill onto the jungler. Actually, it goes over to Malphite. They should be able to get this double. Riven tries to juke back through them. Might be able to escape here. Yeah, her dash is out.
I think because Malphite got the double buffs, they didn't have any follow-up CC. And again, Vlad's just missing a ton of CS top doing this. It is, it is still good to snowball your lanes, but you can't...
I'm surprised he's not further behind, actually. He's only about 8 CS behind right now.
Yeah, but you still can't understate the value of just constantly being in your lane to farm, especially as a top laner.
Exactly. He should be more along the lines of 15 or 20 CS ahead if he wasn't losing the CS.
Right. And especially as a top laner, it's not particularly your job to make those plays. It does make sense that he's doing so because Malphite is still trying to get to level 6, and I mean, he now has his ultimate, so now he'll be able to start making plays. But I feel like there's a tendency for junglers to feel like, not just junglers, supports, junglers, to feel like they need to be doing something. You get in solo queue and you don't gank for 5 minutes and your team starts yelling at you, but sometimes it is just the right call to farm to 6.
You always have to ask yourself, what's the most efficient use of my time? Is it ganking, roaming, farming, even if it's just going back to base? If you're getting an advantage, it's the most efficient way that you can use that amount of time.
And the reason I would say ganking is a little rough is Jace can just knock Malphite back. That's actually a very good way of getting out of that gank by Diana. Just being just in tower range. That's a great ult by Malphite. That should be 1 or 2 kills. Oh, I shouldn't have said anything.
Alright, well, she can just ult it, but she is going to be taken down by Thresh. That was a sloppy execution on that. I want to see Caitlyn positioning a little bit better and microing between targets. I mean, she had her heal. She had her flash. If she really wanted the kill, at that point you could flash over the hook and take the last auto attack if you really needed to. I'm not saying you should, but it's the option. In that case, dying in that means that you're not getting the tower, you're not pressuring Dragon, you're not, Red's not up, but you're not stealing away the enemy's jungle. There is something that you could be using in that respawn time that is at least as important as one of your summoner skills.
So we can see that even though Vladimir's not that far behind in CS, where he is behind actually is in the amount of damage that got put onto the tower while he was out of lane. Top has basically already gone down. Or, I'm sorry, top already has gone down. And Jarvan didn't really contribute to that. Yes, he showed up after the tower went down there, but that's mostly just Vladimir not being in lane. And so, yes, he contributed to 2 kills, but a tower's worth about 3 kills in gold anyway.
And the CS that he missed was about 2 kills rather than 2 assists.
Exactly. So he would just have significantly more gold, both for himself and in gold denied to the enemy team. As for the ganking thing, it's just hard to gank a Riven because of the dashes. It's hard to gank a Jace because of the knockback, and that's why I feel that Malphite literally could have set in his jungle till 6.
Yep.
And I think people underestimate the value of doing something like that because it doesn't feel like you're doing anything, but sometimes preparing to do something is just as important as actually doing something.
Exactly. Well, this is the point of the game where he really needs to shine. Every single ult cooldown, he needs to show up, and he needs to secure at least 1 kill for his team. And at this point, his ult is up, and now he seems to be going back towards the farm side of things. And I'm fine with him clearing his jungle, definitely. But he needs to be using that ult as soon as it comes off cooldown. You need to plan your clear accordingly so that that cooldown is used and it's always ticking down, so it's getting the maximum effect.
I also have to say that it does seem like blue side bot lane is really playing into what purple side bot lane wants them to do, because Taric is this really unidimensional champion. He can stun you, and that's pretty much it. And so he wants to be engaged on. This is kind of a weird fight for them to pick. Just with all the AoE, you don't really want to fight a Malphite and a Vladimir if you can avoid it.
Yeah, seemed like it was a little bit sloppy as well. I saw the Malphite ult was well placed, but everyone was just sort of grouping up for it.
Yeah.
They're all just sort of running around each other in circles trying to get as much damage as they can. It's like, but you're standing right next to a Malphite. You know he's going to kill you, or he's going to knock you up at least.
And I think that's really where the Malphite is going to shine, because if you look at blue side team, it's 2 melee champions, and then a Jace, who's sometimes melee. So you have a lot of champions that, if they are going to focus a target, really have to get close to that target. And that allows for Malphite to counter-initiate. It was also a very good play by Diana to know that she had the damage to dive and get out.
Exactly.
Because that's really risky on Diana, because you don't have a dash to get away.
It was a little bit interesting, though. She didn't actually draw turret aggro when she was flashing. I don't know if the target AI just retargeted fast enough, but...
I don't think it was intentional, but you actually can do that. When the red arrow thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, the pink line, whatever. When it switches to you, before it attacks you, if you flash, it will trigger retargeting.
Oh, really? Even if you don't flash out of range?
Even if you don't flash out of range. So
that explains it, okay. Because it looked odd the way it executed.
So if you have really good micro or are lucky, you can actually break aggro under turret.
Interesting.
So in this case, probably that is a very, very hard thing to pull off. I'm going to guess that at any level below Challenger, it's probably luck. And I don't mean that I've done it, and it was luck. I didn't intend it.
You heard it here first.
Also, if you kill someone on the first hit that does damage to them, the tower won't target you.
Oh, interesting. Clearly, I haven't paid enough attention to turret aggro.
Turret aggro is a weird thing. It's not as weird as it is in Dota, but thank God.
That's one of those issues with me mostly playing support. If there is turret aggro, I'm trying to pull it 90% of the time.
Exactly. This is a really weird teleport coming in. It's a good counter gank, but they saw it, and so got to back off right away.
Even still, it would only work if they were fully committed to a fight, because it's
Right.
Vlad. He's not going to initiate. Down in bot lane, we do see that's going to be A very nice kill over to Jinx.
So one skill that's pretty hard to develop is knowing when it's... Oh, I was like... Tark shouldn't have gone back in, but that was a very good ult by Malphite. Is kind of being able to sense out baits. Like, blue side knows that they're losing, and so if they pick a fight intentionally, you have to kind of assume that the jungler is going to be there.
Hey, congrats to Donovan. You just won the giveaway. We're going to send that prize over to you at the end of the game.
So going back to that early start with all the roaming, the real issue with towers going down is it means that Jace doesn't really have to be top to defend against pushes, just because they're all going to take so long, and that lets him roam to other lanes, and then take their towers. And Jace is a much stronger roamer than Vladimir is, just because he's got a gap closer, he's got a CC. Whereas, as we noted with that Vladimir teleport, he kind of teleports in, and then what?
Very nice pick for Diana there. She's playing really well. I've not seen that many good Diana players, and her execution so far has been quite good.
Diana's a very all-in champion. You kind of... You're there and you're going.
Exactly.
And now we just kind of see... This is, I feel, a really awkward part of the laning phase. Caitlyn and Taric, if they're really thinking about it, should know that this Jarvan gank is coming. Because where else would Jarvan go right now?
Exactly,
there's no mid tower, there's no top tower, and so this is kind of the next logical gank. And you can just see him lurking down there.
Alright, so here comes the Malphite counter gank.
And that's actually a very good place for Malphite to be. I don't know if it was expecting the Jarvan gank or not, but...
I like him for holding on to his ult. It might not be perfectly executed, but it didn't need to be used because both Taric and Caitlyn were able to deal with J4. Just zone the rest of them away from your carries, and then ult only when necessary.
And that was very smart of Caitlyn to not try and put damage on anyone else, to really just focus the Jarvan and say, okay, we can back off long enough, and just keep putting damage on the Jarvan without trying to focus the priority targets.
Good rotation from Purple Team, essentially bringing all your team down to defend this. And I also really like seeing people actually reacting to it. That's quite rare in our games.
But the Jinx steal.
Alright, so I'm sure he knows this, but you do want to click the buff so you can see how much health it has, and then only smite when necessary.
I mean, he didn't get to smite, but it was below smite range. But smiting, I never like to pick on smiting too much as a jungler.
Oh, definitely not. No, I just wanted to point out that like you should be watching the health, but that's as much as I can say about it.
Yeah, there's
Everyone
no like
smites.
There's no like get better at smites. There's just, I mean, there is, but it's a very binary you got it or you didn't sort of thing, and the only way you get better at smites is by missing more smites, learning what works and what doesn't. Actually, with that dragon, though, that would have evened out the gold. Purple Team's really not that far behind, though, simply because they're a little bit ahead in kills.
And Riven is up about 50 CS, so pretty much the only reason that the gold is so close is that Riven is heavily out farming Diana right now.
We actually do see some things that we kind of thought would happen. We see the double hourglass out of Vladimir and Diana. We see a really early Last Whisper out of Jace. That's a very smart call. We see 2 Brutalizers on their team already. That's also, I think, a great choice. And so both teams are really playing to the double AD, double AP side of things. I'd like to see Riven and Jace pick up a Hex Drinker.
I'm actually surprised that Riven didn't go for the early Hex Drinker, especially being Diana that was doing quite well.
I think she's going for Last Whisper with that pickaxe, but I'm not positive. Even it looks like Jinx is going for a pretty early Last Whisper after the Zeal. I actually do want to pick on this again. Bloodthirster is really weak right now. And so that's going to hurt Jinx's damage relative to Caitlyn. Luckily, Jinx does a lot more damage than Caitlyn. So Jinx will remain relevant in team fights.
I strongly disagree with that engage coming out from Thresh. He just sort of flashed in and tried to fight, but his team is all split up. There's no one able to follow that up, even if you landed a perfect engage on Caitlyn.
Yeah, and good on Malphite for holding the ult. I think people sometimes ooh. There was no need to force that tower. But a really good ult from Malphite. That's exactly why you really want to hold it.
Exactly.
If you can get a kill without it.
Yeah, purple team is really abusing any sign of weakness that blue team shows. So I really like that, and how they're just sort of pressuring at this point. But at the same time, that play should not have happened.
Yeah, Thresh shouldn't have gone in. And also, so again, I think you have to look at what you gain out of a play like that. Yes, Riven might think in her head, oh, well, I almost got that Caitlyn. But even if she had gotten the Caitlyn, she would have died, and the other team would have just been able to push the tower.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's nothing to be gained out of that fight. This is exactly what Vlad should be doing, is pushing a lane and then teleporting to another lane. This is what he should have been doing for a long time, but you can see that he is basically top farm in the game. And he's going to be very scary in team fights combined with that Malphite now.
Good counter jungling coming in from Jace. It seems unlikely that anyone's going to catch him.
At the same time, Diana is stealing their red back.
Very nice. I like to see this focus on counter jungling rather than just saying, well, I won my lane.
Yeah,
right?
go take something.
You got to do something with that strength.
Especially with all the outer towers but one down. That's really the objective that's left. This is a really scary situation. If Malphite can get down here, he doesn't even have ult, so there's just not much follow-up. So this just seems like it's going to be a 2-for-1. Malphite's ult is up now. This could actually be a 3v3 initiate, but it doesn't.
I don't like Taric and Caitlyn trying to engage from behind. I don't know what they think is going to happen.
If Malphite follows up with an ult, maybe something. Jace teleporting top is really the only reason that became safe.
Mm-hmm. But either way, I still would have preferred to see Caitlyn maybe approaching from the side.
Yeah, that's... Approaching from behind is just scary because it gives you nowhere to run. Mm-hmm. And as an AD carry, you really always want somewhere to run. Looking at items, I really don't like the Spectral Wraith on Malphite. Just because their team has enough damage from Diana Vladimir that I kind of would rather see a tankier build. And especially with Ancient Golem now giving armor.
Mm-hmm. It seems odd that he would focus so heavily onto those early chain vests and not follow it up with other tank items.
Right. Like, I could see Glacial Shroud being good, I could see Sunfire Cape being good. The double chain vest, yes, they are all physical, but armor amplifies the amount of health you have. Mm-hmm. So if you have no health, 1,000 armor isn't going to save you.
Taking a look at the team, the only person who might consider building a Frozen Heart would, of course, be Taric. And because they're going to be so far away from each other, it would not be the worst game to see a double one. I would like to see the Randuins coming out first, but I would like to see something like a Ancient Golem Randuins and then either Iceborne Gauntlet or finishing all the way up to the Frozen Heart on Malphite.
I do actually like the Iceborne Gauntlet, because the AoE slow will simply contribute to the amount of team fight they have.
It continues allowing you to do some amount of damage while also boosting your utility and your and your damage.
Ooh.
Very nicely executed all.
Unfortunately, they just don't have the numbers here unless they can kite really well. Actually, at least they managed to survive, but Caitlyn going back in for that Q is going to cost her.
I want to compliment Thresh. Even though he did a bad play earlier, he is zoning Caitlyn very, very well. Caitlyn was never able to join that fight,
right?
And she didn't really contribute much. She was constantly trying to deal with Thresh.
It also is a fight that I think probably shouldn't have been started just because of where Vladimir was. Mm-hmm. But, again, Vlad is showing why he's such an annoying champion. is because, yes, there's no one down there, so of course he took the tower, but who are you going to send to fight a 200 CS 2-kill Vladimir?
I do like that ping board position right in the middle of the rock. It's a little bit hard for people to notice, and it tends to last a lot longer.
Other team's turret has been destroyed. Blue team has slain the dragon.
I don't know how I feel about the Relies Crystal Scepter on Vladimir, just because I think the Abyssal would be stronger right now, just because, well, actually, never mind. I take
Yeah,
that
the
back.
only magic resist is on
The only
Jarvan
magic,
right
yeah.
now.
I was thinking for the M-Pen, but actually no. The Abyssal is probably only going to be a late game item against them. Just to buff the damage of their combo.
Been destroyed.
But maybe just straight up Rabadons, because I don't feel that they really need those additional slows. Either Malphite's going to, get a good ult off, or he's not. And Vladimir's ultimate slowing people isn't really going to contribute to that.
I think his thought is if he's going to be constantly split pushing, he wants to be able to kite back and forth and duel people. It makes sense from that standpoint, but it's not. Yeah, I agree with you. It's probably not his best option.
Yeah, it does make sense from a split push standpoint. I just don't think they have a great split push comp. Oof. It's weird to start a fight like this because it's just 3v4 with where Jinx is, and we can see how much of a difference that makes.
Yeah, Jace does take down Vlad, but in the meantime, they just went 3 for 1. So that was well played by Vlad, but I don't know. I just awkward positioning and awkward engages coming out from both teams.
Yeah, I cannot stress enough that fighting should always be a conscious decision, not to start a fight, but to take something. And there was nothing there for blue team to take. If they win that fight, where do they go from there? In theory, I guess they could Baron.
They would have to win the fight and still have like 80% health on all of them.
Right, because there's really also nothing for them to push there. So essentially the reward is pretty low and the risk is pretty high. Whereas, as you saw, purple team win that fight, and they're right next to blue team's tower and can go take it.
A little bit awkward engage coming in from Jarvan. I don't know. He pulled off some good EQ combos, and then I've seen some that are just complete wrong direction. So I don't know if it's just a bad game for him or if he just needs to work on his skill shots a little bit. But that's definitely just I've seen him do it a couple times now.
One thing I also want to point out is the face of the mountain on Taric. I don't necessarily like upgrading it that early. I think what a lot of people will do is start with Targon's Brace for the heal, and then at some point they will swap it out for Talisman of Ascension, because the initiation from that item is just so strong. And there's no one really that I just can't see them needing that shield all that much.
And especially we mentioned in the pregame and a number of times already, they don't really have a strong disengage if the fight goes poorly. So that even makes Talisman of Ascension that much better.
Right, because they can pop that and run away.
Yeah.
At this point, however, I think we see the builds diverging a little bit from Caitlyn and Jinx. The Bloodthirster, just as we're seeing in team fights, isn't really putting out that much damage. Whereas Caitlyn is putting out huge amounts of damage now.
Well, I mean, Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, Last Whisper, for all intents and purposes, she's done.
Yeah.
I mean, she could go full tank on the rest of her build and it wouldn't matter. She has everything she needs to be able to be a threat.
So this is where I kind of don't like the Relies, is because Riven is such an all-in laner with so many dashes that the slows aren't really going to stop her anyway. And we kind of see she just jumps in on Vlad and kills him immediately. For once, it's actually blue team that has the huge numbers advantage now, and this doesn't look very good unless Diana can get here in time.
Yeah, because Jace is not in position. They're able to land the engage directly onto Jinx. The Q doesn't quite connect from Diana, but in the meantime, though, the rest of them are going to be able to clean this up.
A very sloppy team fight, and again, we see the huge difference in damage between Caitlyn and Jinx, where Caitlyn's able to push targets off of her, whereas Jinx doesn't have the damage to deter people from going onto her. Especially with the enemy team stacking armor so hard.
I'm completely shocked that fight did not go more in purple team's advantage. I think it pretty much just boiled down to just split focus. They weren't able to finish off the remaining targets and chase them down.
Yeah. Well, and they don't really have follow-up engage. They have the Malphite ult, and then they have, I hope we've killed 2 or 3 of them now, because that's all of our CC. This is another 3v5 fight for blue team, and that just can't go well.
And it's the same concern with Jarvan, and I don't want to pick on him, but he's missed a number of EQ combos that I've seen, and then, again, just panic flash in the middle of a team fight. I don't know what's going on with that. I can't really comment on it without having spoken to him, but these are areas that you definitely want to be practicing. You don't want to be misusing your skills and then not having them for an important fight.
Right. Jinx has now finished the last Whisper, and so, in theory, Caitlyn and Jinx have even builds, but again, the difference between Bloodthirster and IE right now is just huge. And we'll be able to see that if even an even team fight breaks out. Because the gold is not that different. It's actually only 1.7k. But we can see that every team fight goes hugely in purple team's favor at this point.
Yeah, ideally Baron would have been the play to get blue team back into the game, because it's that extra ally if they're taking damage from it. But they're just not grouped properly. They're not able to respond to these things.
And also, so just because of the way Baron works, I think it's going to be very, even if purple team weren't ahead, it would be very hard for purple team to have a Baron fight go poorly, where it'd be very easy for blue team to have a fight go poorly. And the reasons for that are kind of, one, if you look at Jarvan, he's built all MR and damage. So he can't tank Baron very well. And the reason for that is simple. The other team's got a lot of magic damage. It's not a bad play of him to have a lot of armor. It just makes taking Baron hard. 2, Baron amplifies magic damage done to your team, which benefits purple side hugely, but not so much to blue side because they don't have any magic damage. And so at least for me, looking at these teams, I think, wow, purple team's going to get any contested Barons.
Exactly, yeah. It really would only work if they're able to focus in and kill one target while they're doing Baron, not group up, and then be able to organize well enough to clean up after.
Exactly.
And
That was a
we've not seen that play.
very good flash by Jace. But it's not going to help his team very much. He's going to have to run around for a while, and they're going to get to push mid.
And top, Rip is off split pushing.
I don't know how I feel about the Bork on Jace either. It gives him more DPS, but he's kind of lacking in burst. And again, Jace's itemization is a little bit wonky right now because of the Bloodthirster nerfs, so I don't want to say that it's bad. It may actually be his best option. It just puts him in an awkward position because Bork doesn't benefit him that much because no one's stacking health on the enemy team.
What weirds me out is that he didn't go for the early tier, so he's at just under 700 stacks, 35 minutes into the game. So you don't have your Mirror Mana finished. You don't have any large AD items. The only thing you really have is Last Whisper, Ghost Blade items. They're going to help you deal with that armor stack. But the more successful Jace builds I've seen is essentially rush the tier so it starts stacking, get the early Brutalizer so you have a way to have an effective mid-game, just because of your base numbers, your extra skills, that sort of thing, and then rush right to Infinity Edge. I've almost seen people building him like an AD carry. Then after that I've seen them finishing up the Manamune, and finishing up the Ghost Blade, so that they have that monstrous mid-game power spike, and then combining that with some sort of lifesteal.
And the Infinity Edge still gives a ton of AD, so he'll still have a lot of poke burst.
Because that's just it, your W is essentially giving you attack speed. Okay, well, what do you want for Infinity Edge? Attack speed.
Yeah. And actually that even might let him split push against Vladimir.
It's a dueling assassination build, essentially.
The other thing that's weird to me about it is if you look at... So, Jace's W gives him max attack speed. So why does he want Bork and Yomu's when both of those items give more attack speed? It just seems like an odd...
Yeah, it's definitely overkill.
You can't attack faster than max attack speed. And yes, it will mean he has more attack speed, and when he does his W, he'll get 3 Bork hits, but I think it's not worth it for that alone.
Unfortunately, I didn't look at it earlier in the game while he was maxing, I'm assuming, well, any Jace I've seen maxes Q, then W, then E, because of the cooldown on the E now. It's not worth
Right.
it's not worth maxing early. So the only time you could possibly argue that, oh, I need attack speed, is if you don't always have your W up. But that should not be the case. That means you're maxing the wrong skill.
Also, going back to support itemization, we can see that the Thresh's build is just much more supportive. It's a locket, it's a talisman. Those are all things that say are like helpful to Jinx. I do like that, even though their team is losing. That puts them in a very good position. Whereas if Tarek weren't ahead, all he would have would be a little bit of tankiness. It does benefit him that he's able to stack armor and give a huge armor aura to his team. If you look at it right now, the amount of armor he's giving to his team is 24, which is not a small amount. You know, split amongst his I guess 5 team members, counting himself, that's 120 armor.
And like himself right now has 227, combined with the Randuin's active, combined with the Face of the Mountain, and then of course the health from Ruby Sightstone, because he did upgrade that early. I don't personally like upgrading Sightstone early, but I mean, he is going to be beefy as a result of his itemization. Right. But without having any sort of AoE follow-up CC, which we mentioned so many times with the Malphite, it's just, what is your job at this point? Okay, well, you're peeling and dueling with Caitlyn. That's great. But that's not really going to make the full use of that aura, because you're not going to be near 5 allies.
Right. I don't think it's necessarily wrong for this game. I just, in general, that sort of build is a little risky and inherently based off of being ahead. If you're behind, you're never going to be that tanky support, unless you're Braum or Leona, that just gets to stand in the team and say, no, you can't do anything to me. And Braum is a little strong right now.
Yeah, I mean, they can nerf him as much as they want, but...
He just has a nice kit.
Oh yeah. As long as he can defend, well, there's your Protect the Kog'Maw, Tristana, or whatever late game AD carry. That's your team comp right there. One champion.
So... Caitlyn just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and for me that's going to be the story of team fights, because unless they can erase Caitlyn, look at when she turns around on Jarvan, just look how much damage she does. She basically killed Jarvan in 4 auto attacks. I mean, he got out of range, but one more would have killed him. Like,
yeah,
I don't think Jinx could kill Caitlyn in 4 auto attacks.
Oh, definitely not. She has no Infinity Edge. Yeah, that was a suspicious decision for Jarvan to try and dive in. Yes, it was technically a good engage, but you don't have the Wombo combo from range, because there is so many melees on their team, in order to secure and assassinate the priority targets before they turn on you and you die.
Right. So just the reason that Infinity Edge is so much stronger is if you look at the amount of AD it gives, it's 80, which is the same as Bloodthirster. Now you're basically trading 15% lifesteal, which, to be fair, lifesteal's cool, for 25% crits and extra damage on your crits. So if Caitlyn and Jinx attack 4 times, Caitlyn will crit twice for 250%, which means it's essentially like Caitlyn just attacked 7 times. Whereas Jinx will attack 4 times, crit once. So basically Caitlyn just got 2 free auto attacks.
Exactly.
Which, like, everyone likes having 2 free auto attacks when their auto attacks do 250 damage.
Okay, so we may as well just go over final item builds. I had some issues with the awkwardness of Jace's build. You mentioned attack speed, which I definitely agree with. Overall, I like Thresh's build. It's definitely the right direction, going towards the Banshee's Veil. He has a locket, seeing as there is that AoE magic damage. They have the Talisman for Chase and Peel, Boots of Mobility to make picks for his team and roam around the map. Overall, a really solid build on his part. I don't see any real issues. Back towards the J, so I'm surprised there was no Infinity Edge combined there. Riven, I really don't like the double lifesteal item. Get Hydra. You don't need Bloodthirster. I'm not sure what you would replace the Bloodthirster with at this point. because Infinity Edge isn't that good on melee characters. Unless
To be
you're Tryndamere.
honest, Hexdrinker for me is a very clear pick there, just because their other team has so much magic damage, and I don't see a Hexdrinker on Jace on whom it would be good, on Riven on whom it would be good, or on Jarvan on whom it would be good.
Completely agreed. Yeah.
And like Spirit Visage Banshee Veil on Jarvan, sure it's good, but Caitlyn's still doing physical damage. Like we saw just her chunk Jarvan down, and so I feel like instead of a Banshee's Veil, he could have gotten a Hexdrinker and a Chain Vest,
Exactly.
or
yeah.
even a Warden's Mail. And I feel like every player on that team that isn't named Thresh could have gotten a Hexdrinker and benefited a lot from it. The shield would help, the MR would help, and it still gives them damage. So for me, that's the big thing, is there's like almost no MR on this team, despite it being a Malphite who built Spectral Wraith, a Vladimir, and a Diana.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I just think it really boiled down to team comps, though. I mean, yes, some builds could be improved, but the team comps just weren't executed towards their strengths.
Yeah, it seemed like Blue Team was like grouping up and trying to have those team fights when they're against a Malphite and a Vladimir. You don't want to fight that because, Malphite presses one button, half your team's knocked up. Sure, Jarvan can knock people up too, but it's a skill shot, and it's probably not going to hit as many targets. He's not as tanky. He kind of wants to build a little more on the damage side. He's just not all around not as well suited to team fights as Malphite is. Not that he's bad in team fights. Jarvan's fantastic in team fights, but it's a Malphite.
Okay, so I think that pretty much covers this. Are you able to do another game, or do you have to run?
I should probably run for now.
Okay.
Actually, one more thing. The double Frozen Heart, I actually don't think is a problem in this game. I know we commented on that a lot before, but because Diana and Malphite both are going to dive so hard into the team fight, there's no guarantee that they'll be next to their teams. Or next to each other.
Yeah, I would have liked to see, though, if you were going to do double Frozen Heart, would you not want one on Tarek and then one on one person who's going to dive? So that you're still covering your
exactly. Then you'd have one on Peel. I think that would be better. And then maybe Malphite instead picks up Frozen Fist, or even Diana picks up Frozen Fist, because she has a heavy auto attack component to her damage. And the slow would help her stick a lot better.
I'm shocked that there was not Randuin's on the dive team. Like, it looks like Malphite was building towards it, but you would think that he'd want the early Randuin, so you're jumping in,
over some
alting
5K, yeah.
Randuin's. I don't know, I think that would have been better.
But really, for me, the story was just Blue Team picked a lot of fights where they were like 3v4 or 3v5, and when Jinx didn't really have the damage to follow it up. And so, even if those fights had been 4v4, Jinx would have had less damage. But the fact that they were 3v4 just meant that it's really easy to dive on Jinx because she can't, she doesn't have a 90 caliber net like Caitlyn does.
For sure.